Today's presenters is our team, but most specifically it's Jessica, Jess, who is our account management lead, Chris, who's also our account manager. We have Tierney, who is our program manager, and myself, communications coordinator.
And Yale, who is our bilingual accounts manager.
Yes, who is moderating the live stream chat. So he has instilled his insights onto us, and we will present it on his behalf.
And that's Jane, but she's in Miami.
Yes. And then so for today's agenda, we're going to start with a brief a session on cloud security update, because we will be talking about working in the cloud a lot, and I know a lot of nonprofits or people who work with nonprofits will hear the concern of, well, is my data really secure online? So without further ado, cloud security with Tierney.
Thanks, Joyce.
No problem.
Yeah, we don't need to. That microphone is most certainly not pointed in my direction. Is that on purpose?
Pointed directly at me.
Well, I'll go stand over next to Jess. Okay, so as Joyce mentioned, what we want really today to be about is sharing tips and ideas on how to work collaboratively in the cloud and how to take advantage of all the things it lets you do. But before we get into that, we want to just knock out some of any questions or concerns about security and privacy, so we can kind of discuss this up front and then really focus in on what actually happens when you're working using these tools. So we're going to try to box this into 15 minutes. Happy to chat with you more later, and of course answer if you have short questions now. So to get started, I think we all know there's a lot of great things about working in the cloud, especially so tonight we're going to focus on Google Apps, which is a suite, if you guys aren't familiar. It's basically Google's suite for running your back office at an organization. So it combines all of their tools that are available for personal use, like Gmail, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Calendar, Google Sites, etc. It combines those all and puts it in a package that you can use at your organization. And the awesome thing is it's free for almost every nonprofit, unless you're in the education or healthcare sectors, as of June. So that's super awesome. Similarly with other cloud tools, we'll just call out now a strong alternative for Google Apps, if you're more a fan of the Microsoft world of things, is called Office 365. Again, it provides very similar functionality of email, calendars, document storing, internal intranet, etc. And that is also a great tool and also free for nonprofits. Today, all the examples we're going to show you are going to be about Google Apps, just because, as we said, that's what we're most familiar with, but certainly not trying to say one is better than the other. They're both free, they're both great tools. Again, also happy to chat later about the pros and cons of each one, if you'd like. So, basically, the cloud is free. It helps you access things more easily from different locations. It helps you keep your data more backed up. It helps you work remotely with people. But what are the concerns about the cloud? And usually it comes down to privacy and security concerns. So I just thought I'd get started with a little definition of what are we actually talking about. Because I think let's take this, if you have had this emotional response to when you hear about the cloud, you think, my data is gone out into the ether and I can't control it anymore. And let's break that down a little bit into what are we actually talking about here. So these security and privacy are often terms that are used interchangeably, but they do actually mean different things. So security, in a nutshell, is about the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your data. So it covers not only who can access your data, can the right people access it, can the wrong people not get access to it, which is like the privacy element, but it also covers your data integrity, which is about making sure your data doesn't get corrupted by accident, so you can actually still use it, and also about the availability of your data. So can you actually get your data when you want it? All of those are encompassed under security. Privacy is more about how is your data being used. So as I said, it's definitely related to security, but it's a little bit different. You could have the best privacy policy in the world, but you don't have your data backed up, and then you lose all of your access to your data. So that would be a security problem that's not a privacy problem. Or you could have the best security in the world, but somebody goes and sells your entire database worth of information to another company. So great security, really bad privacy, right? So they're a little bit different, but they certainly interact with each other. So when it comes to the cloud, security is usually by far more fantastic than anything you can ever manage in your own organization. So I don't know a lot about where each of you are coming from, but I think most of us in the nonprofit sector are dealing with either accidental techies working in-house to try to figure things out, You maybe have an IT volunteer or a contractor you work with, or if you're really lucky, maybe you actually have a super overworked in-house IT person who you actually pay some amount that is maybe not as much as they are worth in the market rate. So these people, whoever they are doing their best to keep your data secure. But with resources like that, it's, what we're going to be able to do is going to be limited to trying to install some good security tools on your server, on your computer, keeping viruses out, that sort of thing. So imagine that in comparison to a company like Google or Microsoft or whatnot, who actually has teams of security experts and what they might be able to do in the way of security. Basically, you're never going to have to worry about your data, like losing access to your data. Your availability and uptime of your data is going to be like 99.99999%. You're just going to take away a lot of security concerns that would be an issue if you were kind of trying to manage everything in-house. So security, good. So what about privacy? So this is where it gets a little bit more confusing and fuzzy and scary. And so I'm not going to lie to you. Privacy and our privacy of our data, both our personal data and our organization data, is a big open question and discussion right now in the world in general. So there isn't an easy answer for you. I can't just say, you know what, your data is 100% private in the cloud. Because the reality is it's not. And why is it not? So one of the things that we've sort of become used to as a society that uses cloud tools, whether that be social media, whether that be Gmail, whether that be Dropbox, is that in exchange for using these services, we are giving companies access to our data. And sometimes that, for most companies that have good privacy policies, they're not going to be actually reading maybe the details of our data, but they will be potentially scanning our data to deliver us good advertising, or they might be looking at the way we use our data in order to improve their service and draw conclusions and stuff like that. That is the reality of how companies are using our data right now. So that's one part of this. The other big concern about privacy is privacy in the government, and how do we feel about how the government is managing our privacy. So a big piece of where this has come out, just a little bit of history for you, one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot and talk about cloud privacy is called the Patriot Act. And this is a law that the US enacted after 9/11 when they realized they really needed to crack down on terrorism and have more ways to be proactively protecting the country against terrorist attacks. Of course, that was obviously a huge concern at the time and still is. So basically what the Patriot Act does, among many other things, is it gives the US government, if they feel that they need certain data to conduct a terrorism investigation, they can go to the cloud company or wherever the data is stored and they can say, we need this data about this person and we need you to not tell this person that we access their data. So that doesn't really sit super well. That doesn't really feel great. So that can also feel like, okay, maybe I don't want to put my data in the US, but I like the cloud and I want to put it somewhere in Canada. Maybe there's a Canadian cloud. So the really sad news about that is that the Canadian government actually has really similar policies, they're just not as well known. So altogether, this is a bit of a frustrating situation. But what is the upside of all of this? The first upside is that for most of us, you're not having data that is of concern to the US government in terrorism investigations. So that's the first. Yay! The second good piece of good news here is that these companies are banding together to really try to protect our privacy in whatever way we can, because they know that this is a big issue and a big concern for users. So I actually found this resource that was created by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, as I believe that they're called. It's a nonprofit in the US that is impartial, unbiased, and is working towards protecting the privacy of users, consumers, and organizations that are using cloud services. So they do an annual report on what cloud companies are putting in place, kind of best practice privacy measures, as much as they can to protect your privacy. So were they providing reports on how many requests there are from the government? Do they really force the government to provide a warrant whenever they can, so that there's that piece of accountability there? Do they publish reports about, do they basically, do they fight for greater privacy in Congress? So the good news is if you can look at this and you can see which companies, and they've actually done this over several years, so you can even track which companies have really improved their work, and they have a full report that goes along with this. So that's one piece of good news. Another piece of good news is that you can also, one great way that you can really take action in this is you can also choose cloud services that have really good encryption. So that means that your data isn't just being sent in plain text over the internet for anyone to read, but that it's being scrambled so someone like peeking in, whether that be a hacker, whether that be the NSA, would hopefully not be able to read it. So again, you can sort of see that some of the more major companies really have put in place better policies around this, and some of the US telecoms are lagging behind. But that we don't live in the US, so that's good for us. Okay, so I guess just to sum all this maybe slightly bizarre message that I'm giving to you, to sum it all up, the first thing to really consider, given all this information, plus and minus, is that you need to always first take a look at yourself and do a privacy risk assessment. And this, depending on your organization, this could be something fancy or could be something really simple. But think about the different kinds of data you have in your organization and what level of privacy is needed by each. Maybe your emails and a bunch of your documents are fine, but maybe you want to put more sensitivity and privacy around your donor data or around some client data that you have, right? So just because one piece of data is really sensitive and private doesn't mean that other data can't be used with a public cloud service or something like that, right? So basically, by understanding your own data and your levels of privacy, you can make smart decisions about where you feel comfortable using the cloud. And as I say, as I said, in general, for a lot of nonprofits, this is not. I'm not your lawyer. I can't tell you at the end of the day, but the level of risk that you're dealing with here is relatively low. Another thing that you can do is you can review the terms of service, especially if you're dealing with a cloud product that's not one of the major, really well-known ones, and you're a little bit, you want to do that extra due diligence. I provided a link that has some really good suggestions on what to look for in terms of service. As I mentioned before, you can make sure that you're using services that are encrypted. And a really simple tip, if you guys haven't seen this, is that if there's this lock symbol in your browser in the address bar, then that means that the site is using HTTPS, which means that the data that's being transmitted back and forth between you and the website is encrypted. And you'd be happy to know that if you're logged into TechSoup Canada, everything you do is encrypted. Yay! One thing to look out for is that you do want to check if you do have requirements from your funders, or if you happen to be a largely government entity, sometimes there are additional restrictions on your use of the cloud. In general, there is no law in Canada saying you can't use the cloud unless you are part of the government in BC or Nova Scotia. But certainly, if you have a funder for some reason who insists that you don't put certain data in the cloud, that's something to be aware of because your funding is dependent on that. It doesn't happen usually, but I've heard it happen once or twice. You also want to be aware of CRA's regulations of just making sure you have copies of all your donor data, all your financial data and governance information in Canada locally. So the last points I'll leave you with here is really to compare this with what you're doing right now. I think, as I said, there's a lot of open questions and discussion about privacy and the cloud that are really, they're not resolved yet, right? This is still an ongoing conversation that a lot of the world is having. And so, but also consider what you have right now and what security and privacy flaws that might have, right? If you're giving yourself a pat on the back because you're not storing your data with Google, but you're putting everything on a USB key that is unencrypted and that you will leave in a taxi cab the next time you take a ride or leave on the TTC, that is by far a greater privacy risk than putting your data in the cloud, right? So always compare to what you have right now and think about what really are the risks. I'm not saying that at the end of the day you might not choose to feel that the privacy of the cloud is too great a risk, or you want to take a bit of an ideological stance against what's going on. But I think for the rest of us, I think as nonprofits, we do want to focus on what are we really trying to get done at the end of the day, and what battles do we want to fight? And if these are tools that are really going to help us increase our productivity, maybe that is the right, maybe that the risks are low enough and the benefits are great enough for us that it's worth using. And that's the decision we've made at TechSoup Canada. So, and we haven't got arrested by the US government so far. I shouldn't say things like that.
We went tired.
It would be. Anyway, so those are a few thoughts on cloud and data privacy to get out of the way, but there's definitely a lot more to that topic. So if you have any questions at the moment, happy to take those. Yes.
Will you be covering the settings when you get into the, say, Gmail and Google Plus? And it came up because I was trying to get Google Plus set up today. It wouldn't let me do it unless I gave a birthday. It has all these people you might want to share with. If I'm part of an organization and the organization controls the domain, is it automatically shared with them? Like those kinds of issues.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that too much today. The question was about sort of settings around your Google settings and your Google Plus settings. What I would say, there's certainly, as you pointed out, there's two levels of settings. There's levels that as your organization, if you're using Google Apps, there's overall domain or organizational settings that are set by your administrator. So they will kind of set a baseline for what is okay or is not in the organization. And then, as you said, there's also personal settings. So, for example, one of the things, and I won't admit, I deeply resent this, that Google Plus will ask for your birth date. And I certainly, it's the same with other cloud providers that we've run into. I mean, I feel like it's everyone's discretion of like how to respond to such a request and what kind of information they would like to provide and feel comfortable providing. Do you have a comment on that?
I just want to throw in really quickly. So just as an FYI, Google Plus is not actually part of Google Apps. Google, it's like their Facebook basically. For the last couple of years, as they've been trying to, I just read this a little while ago, they had been sort of trying very hard to force people to use Google Plus. So you would go, say, to YouTube to log in, and you'd immediately get a thing that was like, you're going to merge this with your Google Plus account, right? Yeah. And you could not do it, but it was very frustrating to have to turn it down all the time. So just as an FYI, your Google account, and you can see this whenever you're logged into your social information account or an account that's on a Google domain. When you're in, say, your Gmail is the best way to go to it. If you click on settings and then click on account, that is you as a user, as a Gmail user and as a Gmail person. So that email address is the thing you have to worry about share permissions on. Google Plus is not like, it's not tied in with the suite, but you can create a Google Plus account with that same email address, but the two things will not automatically share with each other.
And if I'm correct, you can choose not to create a Google Plus account.
Yes.
So I think you've gone that.
Yeah, for 4 months now. So Google announced very recently that Google Plus has, and they did it in such a googly way, Google Plus had performed differently than they had expected. So it's no longer forced integration, and you can now, like I never did do the Google Plus migrate, and everything in my personal life is through Gmail. Never had to touch it, and since they announced that, I haven't even seen it. I don't even see the bar on Google or anything. So just FYI, if you do have to do the Google Plus thing for work purposes, like if it's your, whatever, that does not have to happen for you to use Google Apps. You can use Google Hangouts, Gmail, everything without having a Google Plus account. Just if that
I was
sets your mind
trying to set up Hangouts and it would not work
Just
until I
use
did
Gmail.
until I used Google Plus though.
Yeah, no, it's a sneaky thing. If you'd like, Sharon, I can touch base with you later and show you how to turn it on.
Okay.
Just want to throw that out there. It's not mandatory anymore, but it did used to be.
Yeah, exactly, and especially to use Hangouts. I think they figured that was so useful. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah.
Just a small addendum to your the USB key example.
Please.
Another one is the unlock, rather not locked phones, like iPhone or Android. You leave an Android phone out and you've got your Google set up there. Everybody has full access to it.
Exactly. So if your staff or volunteers have their company accounts, anything set up on their phone, especially if they don't have a passcode for it, as you said, you lose your phone, someone's got all your data. So, right, that's the modern example. People still use USB keys, but that's the... yeah.
Can you just run by the encryption part again? How like encryption works with privacy idea?
Yeah, so I guess encryption it's a bit more of a security thing, but there's a lot of different aspects of encryption, and this is why this chart is kind of complicated, but it's basically looking like so if you're on your computer and you say you type an email, and that is a piece of data, that text. So it goes through various touch points on its way to get to its end destination, right? Which includes going to Google server, if you're on Gmail, includes going to Google servers, so it's stored, a copy is stored there, and includes being delivered to the email of the person you're going to. So what this chart is looking at is that, like, at every stage, if someone looked at that, if someone like was able to spy on that connection, like spying on a phone call, kind of, wiretapping a phone call, but in the internet world, would they be able to read your email and text, or would it look like a bunch of gobbledygook to them? And that gobbledygook is encryption. So what this is saying is that, yeah, like at every point, so like when it's actually going to the data center, so to Google servers, or when it's just being transmitted generally across the internet to your browser, and at different, so basically at all the different stages, it gets a little techy, but is it being scrambled up?
Cool.
Yeah, public Wi-Fi tends to be the biggest reason you need that. They can get the computer with the programs downloaded from the internet that they can try and either be a fake access point or snoop in on the traffic of the Wi-Fi they're already logged into. So.
Right, so if you are using a public Wi-Fi and you are sending data across a connection that is unencrypted, that's the most vulnerable.
That's the biggest reason you need that is.
Exactly. We all end up on a secure wireless or something.
Treat public Wi-Fi terminal like a public washroom. Some are cleaner than others, and you are responsible for your own hygiene.
Cool. So happy to circle back to this more at the end if anyone's interested. And for now, I will hand it over to Jessica to talk about the first challenge.
Thanks, Tierney. I'm not. Where do I stand?
Yeah, there.
It's good. I'll just saw my name tag or anything. So hi, I'm Jess. I've been with TechSoup Canada for 3 years and counting, which is very exciting. And working at TechSoup was the first time in my life that I worked for a company that exclusively used Google Apps. I had never really seen it before, other than in my personal life. Like I had a Google Drive that I would store, my resume on, or things I found on the internet that I wanted to be able to look at later. But other than Gmail, I hadn't really used it at all. So I was really nervous when I started that it would be this super high learning bar, and I would be so confused and feel so dumb, and like I'm older than all these hip tech people, so I was afraid I'd be like this dinosaur that was still using Microsoft Office and everything. Was I ever wrong? It was the easiest thing I have every time. And that's honestly, I was amazed at how quickly it happened. So challenge number one today, my goal today is to talk to you guys a bit about working collaboratively in a way that you're not constantly stepping on each other's toes, which I feel that we've really mastered, or they're on our way to mastering. When we get 2 times as many staff as we have now, we'll see just how mastered we have it. So here's an example of a couple common situations. So in my role as an account manager, I spend a lot of my time on the phone with nonprofits and tech people at nonprofits, and not at all tech people at nonprofits. And these are very common issues and problems that they have. So emailing documents and losing track of the most up-to-date version. So let me just take the room's pulse really quickly. How many times has somebody forwarded you an attachment and you've realized that it was 3 or 4 versions out of date? Yeah, exactly. How many times have you had the old Microsoft Outlook trip where you got an email with an attachment, opened the attachment, worked in it, and then resent it, and realized that it didn't save any of your changes because you didn't download it first, right? So it was just working off a web cache. I used to work for a very large computer manufacturer whose name starts with a D and rhymes with a bell, and they had a really serious problem with this because everybody in the organization got CC'd. Everything was crazy. You get the document, and then 10 minutes later you get a newer version at the top of your inbox. So this is a terrible solution for a large organization that needs to collaborate. Calling a bunch of meetings to discuss or work on a single task. We can all say that we work in a meeting-centered organization, and the Center for Social Innovation is very geared towards having a quick conversation and trying to make the personal connection. But how many of you have or can imagine working in a situation where you work for a small nonprofit? Odds are pretty good that there's a few days of the week where you're the only person in the office. Or everybody works part-time volunteer. It's really rare that 2 of you are in the same place at the same time and both prepared to discuss a topic, especially if it's something a little involved or a decision. Maybe you have a board of directors that needs to give approval for every little thing, and one of them just doesn't check email because it's, I just never check my email. And you're constantly having to run around and get that one last person or get that one person looped in. Or running back and forth to get feedback from your entire team. Not quite the same thing, more along the lines of like, at TechSoup, our big, a big organizational priority for us is authenticity. So when we put up new content on the web, or we want to do a promotion or send an email to our members, we will put it into a Google document first, and the entire organization is asked at every level in every department to contribute. So one person might have a look over it and not have anything to add, but catch a typo that someone else didn't catch. Somebody else might say, this is a great phrase, but I actually heard it 2 weeks ago. Maybe try this instead, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's got a different viewpoint, and everybody's got a different perspective. And when all 8 of us look at the document and go over it, when we sign off on it, 2 things. Number 1, there's no way this document has mistakes in it. It better not have any eyes on it. But number 2, we can honestly say that it has the flavor, that it has the essence of our organization. Everybody looked at it, everybody touched it. We can feel really proud of what we made today. And that's something that feedback, depending on what type of org you work for, how you deal with feedback and how you like it, I find feedback is very important. Most of us have found in the past that when you blaze ahead with your idea and you don't listen to feedback, it's later when you do your wrap-up that you go, yeah, I guess you're right about that. I didn't want to admit it, but which is nice. So there's a couple different ways to get feedback, and we're going to talk about a few of those, but Google offers us a few opportunities. So emailing documents and losing track of the most up-to-date version. Here's a solution. I didn't skip a slide, did I? Okay, good. My first time with the little mouse. Instead of working on your document on your computer, on your local machine, and then emailing it to everybody and saying, what do you all think? Why not create the document in Google Drive or upload it immediately to Google Drive? And I want to take a quick second here because this is a question I get from a lot of organizations, which is Microsoft Office is a common product that we carry. Very many times people will call me and say, I'm not sure how to install Office. And I'll say, oh, I can walk you through that. And they'll say, what I'm worried about is, when I install this new version, will it delete all my files? This is a really, really common perception that uninstalling Office also deletes every file you've ever created with it. And the way that I tend to explain that to people is, think of Office, the program Office, as a big old iron filing cabinet. Okay? It's big, it's heavy, it's installed, it's not going anywhere, it's right there in the middle of your office. And all of your files are inside of it. So let's say that file cabinet starts to rust, it's not good anymore, we need a better one that slides nicer, holds more files. We just take all the files out of it first, and then we toss the sucker. Now, if we don't take the files out of it first, that's on us. But Office is basically like that. And Google Drive is like, imagine a suite. It's a lot like Office Suite. So when I say Google Drive, I could mean Google Docs, which is a lot like Word. If I say, I could mean Google Sheets, I could mean, which is their Excel, all these different types of things. When I'm going to create a document and I know the document is for work, I just go ahead and start it in Google Drive. And I think we'll have a screenshot in a little bit. And if you haven't seen it, it's in your Gmail account, the little the clover up in the top. And I'll just go straight to documents and I'll just start to create my file. And I'm good to go. When I'm done, there's a share link I can use to send it to my whole organization, or I can email the link directly. It's totally up to me. Once the document's shared and everybody's got the link and they can all access it and read it, sometimes we'll meet up on Google Hangouts. Our executive director right now is, am I in the wrong spot? Nope. Our executive director, Jane, is currently in Miami. This makes it difficult to ask her little questions about when I can take vacation time. So Google Hangouts has been a lifesaver for us as an organization. So we can send the document, everybody has a chance to look at it, give their feedback on it, even Jane all the way in Miami, and then she can hang out me, or she can start a hangout with all of us and say, so did we all look at Jess's document? This is terrible, we got a lot of work to do. She would say. And then get feedback using Google Forms. So we're going to look at an example of a Google Form in a little bit, because it's the takeaway tip. But Google Forms is basically SurveyMonkey. So you can create a form of questions, drop down, radio button, whatever you like, and send it again with the same share link to everyone in your organization or just a few people, and they can log in and complete it. Everything goes out to a nice little document, which, yeah. No, not used to the slides. My
No
bad.
worries.
But this is what I mean. So we upload the document in Google Drive and then send it to everybody. So this is a real email. This is how we really work. There's Tierney. Tierney needs to update her headshot. So Tierney created so it's docs, google.com, right? So Tierney created a Google Doc and then sent it to our staff mailing list, staff@techsoupcanada.ca, also a Gmail thing, and said, please fill everything in. The nice thing is you get a clickable link, but if you're using Gmail, you also get the little snap preview, which is really cool. You can see at a glance what it is, and if it's important and you need to click on it. You can also download it from here or save it to Drive if it's someone sent it to you as an attachment. Now, what does all that mean? It means that when I click the link, I'm going to come into this document. So this is a Google Doc. This is like the Word equivalent of Google, I believe. Yeah. It's hard to tell sometimes, but there's the fill. So this is our Friday meeting template. The date, who was all there. We made this nice little table, and you can see how everybody's names are here, right? So why are they yellow? Okay, so Yale last week attended a conference. This template's the same every week, just has our names in a box, right? And then we'll put in, I'm going to update you guys on this, I'm going to tell you about that. Got an update from so-and-so, he finally did the thing we wanted, yay. So you can copy any text in a Google document and right-click comment. Right-click comment is RCC, right-click comment. Say it, it's even fun to say, right-click comment. It sounds like a boxing move. Right-click comment is the trick to collaborating with Google Drive. So Tierney selects Yale's name, right-click comments. Hey, let's hear about your conference. Now when Yale logs into the document, he'll not only see all this, but he'll see Tierney's comment on the side. And because it was to him personally, if he mouses over it, he'll know it's for him. It'll show him where it was linked to. Tierney was really interested in people's conferences because she also has Joyce, if she could give a quick update on the conference. Now this screenshot's taken from Joyce's computer, so you can see how Joyce is replying, sure, and about to click reply, like that. And when that happens, it'll, right below Tierney, it'll be a picture of Joyce saying, sure. See this button here, resolve? So we have right-click comment, and we also have right-click resolve. Resolve is when you close the discussion. Pretty simple, right? For something like this, yep, I'll update you, click resolve, it's gone. It no longer shows on the side, so it's not distracting visually. You know that everything that's related to that has been taken care of. What you can, right, resolve. A good rule of Google etiquette, and this is something that is informal, but of all the people I've talked to that work at Google-centric organizations, including CSI and us, the etiquette is whoever opens the comment should be the one to resolve it. They had the question, right? So I may go in and be like, here's the answer that I think is correct. Resolve. That's not polite. So just FYI, I learned that one. I didn't think anyone would find, but it's true. So now we're all set, right? So this is our meeting template. I know what my boss wants updated. We're all ready to start filling in here all the answers. And that's the living collaborative document that we're talking about that Dawn is working on right now. So here's a fun tip. How many of you, as we talked about versions earlier, who loves track changes? So much do I love track changes. Sometimes track changes has saved my butt, and once it saved my job. I'm a big fan of that functionality. And the one thing about Google that always kind of was like, I myself can't always tell who last touched a document, who last edited it or opened it. Whereas with some, like with the email, you can see the last time someone logged in. Okay. So they have now implemented editing permissions and a way to track your changes, which is awesome, and it's very new. But when you're in a Google document, this is the share button I talked about. So I write all this, and then I want to send it to everybody. So I'll click share, and it gives me a little screen where I can either paste in email addresses, or I can, whatever I would like to do, wherever I would like to go. In addition to this button, there's now this little green button, which gives you, it's called suggesting. So what we can do is, so instead of right-click comments, right-click suggest. So here Joyce has suggested, instead of using non-profit, we should say non-profit. The reason this is good is, with the comment system, it's more to let other people know what you're thinking. Do you have questions? Did something happen? You need more context. It's a great place to post links. If you have a document going, you're like, by the way, this is the footnote of where I pulled all that from, without it becoming a big cluttered document. This allows you to do that same thing, but by suggesting editing changes. I have worked with people that were writers that were very frustrated if you were to correct sort of things for them, right? And some people that didn't care at all and really appreciated it. Depending on your work style, this is a way that you can do it. So if you have somebody that wants you to give the once-over for typos, for grammar, whatever, you can go through and make any suggestions that you have without touching the original document. And then if they choose to use them, they can just resolve. Super, super easy, super, super simple. Hangouts, so same thing, you can also do screen shares with Hangouts. Hangouts is basically what Skype used to be. It's not, Skype is great, and we love Skype products, and Microsoft's amazing, but Hangouts is what Skype used to be. Easy. You can share your screen in a Hangout. So there's Tierney and Joyce collaborating on our new webpage, and that's our executive director, Jane, all the way in Miami. And all three of them are working in real time on the same thing, and the conversation is, I've noticed only like a very, very small delay. Like even the actual relay is pretty good. Like Jane's all the way from Miami, we're on a wireless CSI connection in a notorious dead spot on the 4th floor. And no thing, yes?
For a little larger organization, is there a limit to the number of people that can get onto?
10.
Actually, so it's if you have like a Google Apps for Work account, it's 15.
Okay. So, Les, do you mean like on a certain plan, or do you mean like conceivably in general?
No, just getting a group together if you had 25 people.
Right.
Could be.
Hangouts is limited. Your Hangout can't be more than, I think it's 25.
Yeah, so if you're on like a free Gmail account, it's 10. If you're on a Google Apps account for work, it's 15. And if you want more than that, the way to do it is to have Hangouts on air, which is like a broadcasting thing. And there is a trick to, it's meant for public live streaming, but there's a trick to make it private, which is kind of a hack, but it works.
We'll let you know.
We'll talk about this later. You know what I'm saying? Don't say hack in here. You were talking about the government earlier. You're just saying You're going to get us all in trouble.
Workaround.
So Google Forms, the last thing I'm going to show you. So these are Google Forms. So this is a real Google form that Chris and Gail and I use every day because part of our job at TechSoup Canada is taking your phone calls. And we love it. We love your phone calls. But we have noticed that your phone calls tend to center around 5 main topics. So we are a small company, and we are a small company, but we do try to provide full service customer service. One of the challenges for that for us is having 3 people serving the whole program, and each one of us having different work styles. So we need to capture the data of who is calling us and why for millions of reasons, mostly organizationally. We know our audience, we know who's coming by, what worked, what didn't work. If somebody calls 10 times a day and asks me the same question, after 2 weeks, I can look at that and say, we should probably put the answer to that question on the website. People want to know. But I would have no way of knowing that if we didn't have it all together. So every time that you call us on our little switchboard of phone calls, when it comes up, this Google form that Tierney created also comes up. And beautifully, it pre-populates. So it says anonymous. I didn't do that on purpose. The person that called had it literally said anonymous on the call ID. So this is me logged into my thing. So every time the call comes up, it pre-fills the phone number, if it's available, anonymous if it isn't, my extension, so you know who's up the call. Are they already registered with us? Yes, no? And what was the topic of the call? There are some more topics below here, but like it's the same thing. So we can click, click, click. There's one called Other, and there is a free writing field, so we can put whatever we like. And then at the end of our weekly meetings, every response that we put in that topic goes into a Google spreadsheet. So this is in the back end. Okay? I don't see this every day. I could if I wanted to, but it's not necessary. When did timestamp? What was their name? What province? And stuff like that. You notice all these people are from none of it? That's because we couldn't show you real data. But this is and then imagine you have an Excel spreadsheet that tracks every call you take in, how long it was, who called, who picked up the call, why they called, how it got resolved, and anything else. And you can press one button. I thought that's what the Zoho thing was.
No,
Is it
that's
coming
later
up?
on, yeah.
Okay. You'll see it later, but we have a super cool data dashboard that we built out of it. So there you go. And your Google form can be styled with CSS. So Google Forms on our call topics is our #1 use of it, but there are other uses for that as well for surveying your office. we have a reputation at TechSoup Canada for taking birthdays really seriously, like Olympic level seriously. So we created a survey asking the eternal question, what is better, cake or pie? Can I just quickly take the room's temperature on that one? Okay, cake, hands up. Pie? All of you are wrong. Sorry. Cake is the only correct answer because cake has frosting.
Jess, it's cake and pie.
Cheesecake is its own thing, Sharnowski. So this is an example of a really cute looking form that was relatively easy to throw together, right? This wasn't like a massive project. And some questions that we ask new employees when they come on so we can collect. And okay, is it this? It's not going to work?
Set up, yeah.
What I wanted to show you was we do actually have an internal document called Cake Survey, where it's the name of the employee and the questions are cake or pie, and then they give you either the right or wrong answer. And then what type of cake would you like? And then if we couldn't get you cake, but it wasn't also pie, what would you want? And then finally, any other notes that you have about cake and pie.
Take it very seriously.
As a result, we have been able to pull off sneaky secret ninja birthdays for 2.5 years solid, where everybody gets exactly what they want. And the nice thing is that you forget about the survey until it's your birthday, and you're like, how did you know it? Right. So it's great. So my tip for you to take away, other than cake is way better, and you all need to get your head on straight. The next time you want to attach a file to an email, try sending it to the cloud instead. Use OneDrive. It's already configured on your Windows machine if you're Windows 7 or later. If you want help configuring it, grab me afterwards. I'm happy to show you. Dropbox, Google Drive, Box.net, whatever you like, try it. Because what you'll be sending is a link to that document, and any changes that were made will stay. It's a living document. You can be assured of its authenticity and its veracity. That's my last tip to you. Any questions? Anybody? Sharon?
We still have questions. Do you find that it's best for an organization to create its own email address that then gets attached to a drive rather than having everybody just share from their own drive?
This is a great question. It depends on the type of organization and how they work together, and it depends on how much you need to revert those permissions. Joyce is going to talk a little bit about HR turnover and some of the issues that can come up with that, and she will definitely have some more on that. Me personally, very quickly, one thing that I do at TechSoup is because I kind of determine whether or not a charity that has a lot of branches each branch can have its own account. It's part of my thing. So I will get like an organization, say St. John Ambulance, that has 1,500 locations in Canada. That's too much for one person to manage. I don't care how great you are. That is crazy. So what I did was set it up with someone at SJA, where I've created a spreadsheet with one page for each province that tells you which branch is registered and who the contact person is. Now that person is shared on it, and I'm shared on it, so only the two of us can view it. I guess like my administrator could technically if she wanted to. He's very happy with this because he can log in anytime and immediately get the info he needs about who's there, or who to call, or what's happening, without having to call me, wait for them, email them, whatever. But the security aspect is such that only his email address has permission, and I revert the permission every time that he goes in or makes the change. So I get notified. So I'll go in and check, was it him that made the change? Did somebody else access his computer? And then the two of us kind of manage it that way.
But that's from Jess, not from TechSoup.
No, that's from TechSoup.
Oh, it is from TechSoup.
Well, Jessica at TechSoupCanada.ca.
Right, but it's
Like, I wouldn't do
not
that on my
like
personal.
info at TechSoup or orders at TechSoup.
We don't actually have, yeah, that's true. We don't, well, we kind of do. We don't have a dedicated generic email like we do in the sense of like we've created a few, like the network one and stuff. Mm-hmm. But staff at TechSoupCanada.ca, which is our listserv that we're all on, because it's a listserv, not an email, we can use it to share documents in bulk, but it creates problems. Like logging into it can be a pain in the arse, and like making changes can be a pain in the arse, and if you're logged in that way, no one can, like, it's a bad idea. Name it and claim it.
Because I was really surprised that when I shared a document with somebody else, that they could share that document with somebody else if I give them edit permission.
So you can set the settings so that that can't happen. When you get, when you click on the share button, it's pre-selected that anybody you send this link to can open it, and you can uncheck that.
Well, yes, but I want X person
Yes.
to open it and edit it.
Yes.
But then they also, if they have those
So if you
permissions,
un-
they can then.
If you uncheck that box, then the link will only work for the person that you have sent it
Oh, the link
to.
will only work.
If that person forwards the link to 20 friends and you have it set that that's okay, then that's on you.
Okay.
It's tough, and it's pre-selected for ease of sharing. The idea is to make it easier to share and it works, so a lot of stuff is turned on by default. But that is definitely something that you can change. Anyways, I'm at a time. Yeah.
What, I keep tripping over this when I try to use a shared doc. You said, and because I'm always seem to be doing it with new people, if you share it with somebody's email address, so only that email address has access to it, what do they see, what do they get?
What they'll see is, depending on if you just paste in the link or if you use the share widget, you mean, right? Like click the share button up at the top
Yeah.
and put in their email. Okay. If you use the share widget, then they'll get an email that appears to be from you that says, I've shared a link with you. And then you can click the link and go there. Unless you know how on that share widget it says send a message? You can type in a message if you want, but otherwise the default is just that.
All right, so how does a Google Drive know that that is the email?
Because you entered it.
Okay, but how, but that means they have to log in somehow.
What it's going to do is send an email to the email address that you gave it. So in order to get your link, they will have to check their email, same as as any other email. But if you do it with the share widget, so let's say I create a document, right, and I send it to you@youremail.com, and that's the only email that and I click send. There's a little button there where you can type in a message. Hey, it's me. This is that document we talked about. If you like, and it will send it. And it will send it just like a normal email, just like a normal Gmail that you would get in your inbox. And it'll just say, from that person, I've shared a link with you. When you open it, and there'll be a doc link just like the one. Just like it'll look like that. It'll look just like this. So in this case, Tierney wrote the subject line herself. The documents got a very long name. But if she hadn't, if she was in this document and pressed the share button and put, jess@techsoupcanada.ca, I would get an email from Tierney Smith that says, 2014, 10/10 Friday, I shared a link with you. And I would
Okay,
click.
all right, but so the person is getting the link, that anybody could have that link. They could share that link with anybody.
So that's what Sharon and I were just talking about. So
Yeah.
you have the ability to set that or not.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. So if you set that, so it's only for that link.
Yeah.
So that person, they're gonna have to log in to something.
To their email.
Okay. Yeah, so for example, if Jess opened it from her personal email, but Tierney sent it to Jessica@TechSoup Canada, and Jess is jess@gmail.com, that's her personal email, she won't be able to open that link. Because Google will know that someone is trying to access this, but it doesn't match the email that Tierney said.
You do not have to have a Google Plus. You don't have to have a Google account. I've shared documents with people that have Hotmail. It doesn't matter. All it does is send them an email with a clickable link. When they click that link, what will happen is one of two things. It'll either say, this link is only available to you@hotmail.com, and it might ask you to, you'll be able to click through it. But if you're not in a Gmail account, it won't matter. If you are in a Gmail account and you have multiple Gmail accounts, you'll have to switch to the one that the email is for to view the document.
Yes.
Sorry, one more comment.
Actually, if you don't have permission, you will, when you click on the link, you will open a window with request permission, and you should be able to request the permission to open the link.
And it'll show you what email you're logged into too.
Okay, so it's just a cache thing. So it's just storing
You have to be logged in.
it only knows you by cache.
No, it only knows you by login credentials.
Yeah, but logged into what?
Your email address that I sent the email to. So your name @gmail.com. So you'll
Yeah,
go
but
to
what if you're on a completely different email?
then you have to log out of it and log into the one that it was shared with.
So if
Yeah,
you're,
but if I'm talking about sharing it with somebody outside of Gmail.
yeah.
Right, it doesn't matter. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain this because I feel like I'm really missing it. So
So if you shared a document to my Hotmail,
Yep.
I'd have to log into my Hotmail in order to open that email.
to get the
And-
notification.
And so if I log into my Hotmail, but I forward it off to my Yahoo account, and then I go into my Yahoo account and try
All right, so there's some way of Gmail talking to Outlook, say, and knowing that.
Matching of the email.
Not really, it's just matching. It's a very simple comparison. Does A look like B? Yes, allowed. Does
Alright,
A look like
okay,
B? No,
okay.
don't. Honestly, I hear what you're saying. It's really easy when we talk about like stuff in the cloud and stuff that's intangible and permissions. Don't overcomplicate it for yourself.
Yeah.
The only way the person will be able to view what you sent them is if they have the login credentials that you told Google it should have.
If it helps after this, I can show you like a live demo on what that looks like. So then I'll
He
have
added
two
another
accounts.
twist at the very end there, using Outlook, that the person's popping the email off with the client on the computer
Yeah.
and not logged into the web.
Yeah.
That may affect it.
Maybe, yeah. But if you're an Outlook user to the point where like you're so married to Outlook, I can't imagine people like that having a webmail address that isn't tied into it. So, I mean, it may happen. Definitely, that'd be a weird use case. People seem to either go really ham on Outlook and they use it for absolutely everything, or they hate it and they'll never touch it. I don't meet a lot of people that are just like,
I mixed the two. I had my Gmail account come up in my Outlook as an additional.
your personal?
So then, yeah, if you had an Outlook, if you had your email in Outlook and then you clicked on the link to the document, you'd be required to log into your web browser to the email that had permissions. So you'd still have to log in your web browser either way. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking like from a work perspective, it'd be rare that I would email it to your personal Gmail instead of like your work email. But yeah, absolutely, that's totally valid.
So yeah, so after this I can show, because we have Office 365 accounts too, so then I can show you what it looks like on both the client platforms. But anyways.
Yeah, it's just something that I keep bumping into, like getting people saying, you know, I can't log in. It's asking me to log in, I can't log in.
Yeah, I'll show you one of those talks tomorrow. So then you can also troubleshoot for them.
And then you can be like, look, I went and learned how to do this. Just listen to what I tell you. Any other questions for me? Okay, thanks very much.
So my name is Chris, and I'm also account manager at TechSoup Canada. So I'd like to say about some things that people talk to me about, and I hear about, and we all hear about a lot, is how do we manage the messages that come into your generic email address? And so we have some generic email addresses, and this touches on what we were talking about a little before, but whether you have a generic email or a listserv, and let's talk about this scenario a little bit more. So what will happen is you'll have a generic email address for your organization. So info@justiceanimalshelter.com, something like that, an email address for your whole organization that a lot of different people can look at and speak to the emails that come in there. And what will happen is a lot of times organizations will set up their generic email address as a listserv, so as a mailing list. So if you send something to that info@ email address, that a message will be sent to everybody that's copied on it. And so you'll have 4 or 5 different members of your team with the same email from just your regular user, and they all have to decide who's gonna respond to it. You, me, wait, did you start already? No? Okay. So it can be very, very, very disorganized and very confusing and very inefficient overall for your organization, just trying to get one cohesive answer back to the people who are emailing. And so that's a common situation that comes up, and we've come up with a solution that we like, so I'll tell you a little about that. Our solution is, instead of using a mailing list for info@, we have one email account. And so for example, we use our customer service at TechSouPCanada.ca email address. So if you guys sent an email to us, rather than sending an email to Jess, myself, so Jessica at TechSoup Canada, Chris at TechSoup Canada, Yale at TechSoup Canada, instead of having all of us with that same email, what we do is all 3 of us log into the one customer service account. And we manage all of the emails that come up that are in there, and we found it's a lot easier to manage one inbox with one email than manage 3 people trying to respond to all to the same email. And because all of the emails are coming in to one inbox and all 3 of us are working on it at the same time, we use labels and filters just to keep things a little more organized and keep us all on track and not stepping on each other's toes. So I just want to clarify first off, and let's not assume anything, a quick description of what's the difference between a listserv and an email account. So a listserv is a mailing list. Like I described before, you send an email to the listserv, it sends it to everybody. A good example of that is our staff at TechSouPCanada.ca. If Trini sends a document to staff, she's going to send that to all of us. So it comes into all of our inbox and we can all see it. But with an email account, if you send an email to that, it's going into that one email account and all of us have to log in and look at it. So we wouldn't want to do that for staff. That'd be terrible. If we'd always have to log in and check an email that we want to communicate with all of us. It's a lot, but for emails that are coming in to ask us as an entity, one question, it's a lot easier for all of us to log in and work on that one email like that. So a great example for an email account is, how do I install Microsoft Office? That's a question that maybe one of us should handle. A great example of a listserv, of a mailing list, is there's cake in the kitchen. I want everybody to know there's cake in the kitchen. So, using Gmail. Did I skip the slide there?
Nope.
Okay. Using Gmail. So, this is an example of one of our shared inboxes, one of our accounts that we have. And so, to make it a little easier for us to identify what's going on and what we need to do, we use the filters that are along here, and we can tag emails of different natures or different categories. So, for example, we would want to know who might want to, we might want to start thinking like who's going to handle it. So all of us have our tags. Jess has her pink tag, and I have my orange tag, and Yale has his green tag, and it's a little and so that helps us determine just who's going to be working on things. If we identify that one person is particularly good at handling these questions or should handle this because they have a history with this organization. That's one way we might want to just categorize, sort things. If something's particularly urgent, something we really should get this cleared out as soon as we can, we'll have something to say, this is urgent. Or this is something to consider in the future as a possible good idea. We'll have categories to look at things in that light and in those filters as well. And then obviously, it's really easy to group emails and messages about their subject matter. So a great example for us is if people are sending in questions about Google for nonprofits, we'll tag those and be able to filter through them and do a little bit of analysis on them and gain some insights later on. You might see it in other organizations if there's an email about tax receipts sent to donations@yourcharity.com. Emails about tax receipts you generally want to handle in a certain way. You might have one dedicated person for doing tax receipts. So you'll tag those and leave them for that person. Another example might be if you're running an animal shelter, and somebody emails about volunteering, you can tag it about volunteering, or intake, you can tag it about intake, or rabbits, if they want to know about rabbits, tag it with rabbits. So filters and tags, they're a great way to just take all of the email that everybody's looking at and sort it, filter it, and just handle it in a little way that's easier instead of looking at one massive inbox. And so even with the rules that we have, the filters, and you still have, at the end of the day, 3, 4, 5 people logging into the same email address, looking at the same emails, and if they're all really keen that day about answering every email that comes in as soon as it comes in, we're going to step on each other's toes. It happens sometimes. But there are ways in business rules that we've come up with as a team to mitigate that risk of just each of us working on each other's work and duplicating our efforts. So we'll just share these tips with you, how we've come up with this solution. So if an email comes in and you start working on it, as soon as you start working on it, click on reply. So it looks like you're starting to type something. Even if you're not typing something, just click on reply so that when anyone else is looking back in their inbox, they see, oh, it's read, someone's working on it already, so I know that I'm not going to start with that one. I'm not going to open it and start reading it because Jess or whoever else has already started working on it. And then once you have labeled something and it's categorized and sorted the way that it should be, take it out of the inbox. Remove the inbox tag, because what that helps do is decrease the clutter in your inbox, so that the other people who are looking at the inbox, it isn't a big list of emails. It's categorized, it's taken away, it's being handled, it's done. You don't need it in your inbox anymore. And the third way is mark an email as unread if you need to come back to it and work on it further. So when we look at our shared customer service inbox, we know anything that's unread still needs work to be done. So if you look at it and say, I cannot handle that right now, that's really involved, I can't do that in 5 minutes before I go on lunch, I'm going to mark it as unread so I know that anybody who's there and can pick up on it and work with it, knowing that I haven't touched that yet. That's still fresh in the queue for us to work on. So it's just a few little tips and tricks that you'll learn as you go on and into it. But this is what we've found as tips and tricks to help us from stepping on each other's toes and duplicating our efforts. Worst thing that you can have is your user sends you an email, gets 2 responses that have completely different information. So, so another tip we wanted to tell you about is just to tell you about how easy it is to use filters. It's very easy. Sometimes you can think adding filters and categorizing things can be really difficult, and a whole long list of things. It's easy. It's sorted alphabetically. If Joyce found an email that she wants, that she knows is hers, she goes in, grabs it, throws the tag onto the email. It's there. It's done. You can add as many tags as you want, as you need, not as you want, as you need. And it's really simple. I'll get to you in this. One other thing we wanted to tell you about as a tip to handle and manage all those emails that are coming into your inbox are filters. And filters are great for reducing and managing the clutter in your inbox. Filters will let you take emails that come from a certain source or have a certain email or have some keywords in their subject line or various other variables there, and let you handle them in certain ways. So you can put them in their own separate folder out of your inbox. You can apply a tag to them automatically. You can mark them as read. So a great example of how this works is anything that's from our smartsheet.com tool, we'll put into a folder so that we know, okay, these are where all of our Smartsheet notifications are. If I'm alerted to a task, I can look here and see a quick list. I can just click on the, like a little filter for Smartsheets and say, okay, here are my tasks for the day. If you wanted to handle mailing lists, so the emails that you get from mailing lists, listservs, that's a great way also. So if you signed up for the Charity Village newsletter and they send you one every single week, instead of having those clutter up your inbox, you can put all of your newsletter emails, direct them so they don't even touch your inbox. They automatically forward into their own little folder or category. So it saves a lot of time when you're trying to go through all of your emails from all of your clients. And so what we just wanted to tell you is give it a try. Give it a try. You might not want to do this with your main local info at your charity one that is live and everyone's using. But if you're creating a new generic email, like local chapter at yourcharity.com, Maybe instead of making it a list serve, so it goes to the 3 people handling that chapter, make it one email account and have those 3 people log in and handle the emails that come in that way. And I think what you'll find, if you follow some of these tips, that they're going to process their work a lot more efficiently, and there's going to be a lot less reduction there's going to be a reduction of duplicated efforts. I think you'll find it a lot more efficient. And to tell you a little bit more about other stuff, I think Joyce.
Oh yeah.
Want to take questions now? Sure. I think you have your question first.
Yeah, were you using tags and labels interchangeably?
Yeah.
I was, yes. They're actually called labels. And the act of applying a label was labeling or tagging. I got lax in that, so labels and tags I use interchangeably, yes.
So how do you handle like multiple accounts? So you must be having your own individual account?
Yeah. So we have quite a few generic email addresses that, again, will all work out of inboxes. Plus I have my own Chris at TechSoup Canada email. And Gmail specifically has a great feature to allow you to switch between accounts. So I can have my customer service inbox open in one tab and my Chris email to get emails from the staff in a different tab or in a different browser if you so choose. Gmail allows you to work with different accounts at the same time.
So you don't have to enter the password every time for each one?
You could if you want to. I don't want to, so.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, Gmail also has there's also Labs, Google Labs and Gmail Labs, which is the sort of things that, sorry, I didn't mean to just run this over. We have a couple people that manage 2 inboxes at once, and they're two different addresses. There is a Labs thing where you can have 2 inboxes on the same page. So it'll show you the first one up top and the second one on the bottom, or however. Just wanted to throw that out there.
It's good. I hate it.
Yeah.
Some people really
It's okay, different
really
work styles.
It's confusing to look at.
Just a small addition, actually. If you use Google Chrome, they actually allow you to have separate profiles. Sorry?
I think it's 5 total, yeah, that you can have.
Yeah. So the profiles I've used, like one window is this profile, one window is this profile, so you don't actually mess it up. I actually like that with the labs you mentioned. And I connect with you because I always get that confused. So I complain to.
It's not a horrible solution, but it's not the most elegant one by a long shot.
But I prefer the Chrome profiles over that.
I just found a problem with Hangouts in one of my Google accounts. The Hangouts worked and the other one it didn't. And so you have to log out of the other one first before you can use it and put them on the logouts.
From time to time, that will happen. You just need to log out of all of them and just refresh your RAM and your cache, and it should be fine after that for a good number.
The resolution seemed to be to create a whole other Chrome instance, like a separate Chrome instance and like different.
You can just log out. Just log out of the Gmail account that's
didn't
giving you
work.
trouble, and then flush the cache. So do Control F5 instead of just a regular refresh.
Oh, okay.
So that'll empty your cache and cookies, and then you can log back in.
Yeah, we'll have to do that every few weeks or
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
There's yeah, like I don't know about you, like I have I think 7 different accounts. Like in Gmail, you can associate other accounts, right? If you click on settings, add account. So I flip between the customer service one we're talking about and my personal, like throughout the day, because I also hate the layer cake approach to email, right? But I've got like 7 now because I'll touch this, I'll click vetting and I'll touch a few of them. And every now and then Gmail will be like, sorry, you have too many logins, I can't handle this anymore, you need to do something about it. And I won't be able to do anything, or it'll force me to log into vetting for some reason, it's the one it wants me to log into. And at that point, you just gotta sign out and just flush your cache and be done with it. But the other reason why your Hangouts might work on one setup and not another, just something to check, is make sure that you upgrade it to Hangouts. Because the default is still the old Gmail chat, which has a different, like, if you have to click on this, it's like, upgrade to the new chat, try it out. That could also be a thing.
Thank you.
Okay, and since we're always talking, all right, so I'm gonna wrap it up with how to share your organizational knowledge. And it doesn't matter if you're a small nonprofit or a large nonprofit or medium. You're eventually going to have a bunch of historical documents or even live documents, and you're going to have to organize it. There will be documents that you don't want to be easily accessible on a day-to-day basis, but For example, if you have like a strategic plan, you want to know what you were thinking 4 years ago, you will want that document living somewhere, even if you don't need to access it day to day. And a lot of organizations, they kind of make the mistake of like, they have all the drives on their computers or on an internal network that people will go to and like dump all their files. But majority of the time they work directly on their C drive on their local computer because it's faster and it's easier for them to save things and etc. But what ends up happening is you get a nightmare of a situation when staff turn over. Who here has encountered a situation where you needed to access a document from someone who has left? Right? It's a common issue, or no, I don't want to say issue. Hopefully it's not an issue, but it's a common scenario. But what ends up becoming an issue is when either you don't know how they saved, you don't know their structural hierarchy. I've seen a lot of people just name folders after themselves. So, like for example, like Joyce 1, Joyce 2. My folder. And you open it, and there's a lot of things in the root folder, but there's also a lot of subfolders. You're like, even if they have the document, you don't know how to find it. So that's an issue. The other issue is that hopefully this doesn't happen, but it's not inconceivable that people would just delete files off of their C drive for matters whether it's accidental or intentional, and then now you have to go back and you have to take it from the actual hard drive and to retrieve it. So that's an unlikely scenario, hopefully, but that is a possibility. And another thing is, let's say you do have a shared drive in your organization, but all the information there is just outdated. Like all the documents dates to 2010. You're trying to find updated processes to work with, but you have to work with an old document updated. Or another thing is you don't know where to find a document. You know something exists. People have referred to it before. But when you go into your drive or your shared drive, you're not sure where it is, and you're trying to click through the folders, and it's not speaking to you. So our solutions is, and you heard this, and I'm going to beat this to the ground, but work in Google Doc or in a cloud drive for various reasons that I'll get into. We also use an internal wiki, which is becoming a common practice. A lot of people have an intranet, which is just basically a website that's not public. It's private for you and your staff that you can log in with a username and password. And it's supposed to house all of the important documents, not just the day-to-day, my to-do list for this week, but it's things like what is our HR policy? What is the policy around, suggesting new changes? Those are the type of documents that would commonly live in an intranet. We also, actually, it sounds kind of self-explanatory, but we search to find relevant documents. And I put this last because it really ties into the first two. If you don't have the first two things set up properly, your search will be useless or not helpful. So let's get into what do I mean by using Google Drive. Just spoke to you about uploading or creating a document in there and sharing the link. So it's almost like a shortcut to where the actual document exists. I will speak to more so as the function of it being a drive on the cloud. So whether you want to create a document inside or upload it, we highly recommend having a cloud drive that everyone can access, and you can actually manage permissions in here. If you're actually, I'll talk about it later. But basically, this is our drive. So I don't think I have anything that's confidential, but here it is. So you can see our site structure, our folder structure is all consistent and so all of us, even though we work in one, we have different working styles, we work in one drive, a shared drive. We have headings that make sense to people, even if they come from external. So if I have a document from today's events, I can look under events and content because that makes more sense instead of donations program. So then you don't have to get into the habit of guessing what folders mean. We also have business rule that when you create a folder, name it so it makes sense. Don't name it Joyce 1, Joyce 2, or cats. Unless it's actually about cats. If it's about cats, then that makes sense. So then we also have business rules around how to set up our site, our folder hierarchy, which doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but it is once you start working on it. And if you don't have that set before you start working in it, it's just the mistakes will be multiplied exponentially. It's not one person making a mistake every now and then. It's your whole staff doing their own thing in the shared drive, so I highly recommend having business rules. Simple things like, how do you do your dates? Do you do it by year, month, and then day, or day, month, and then year? Things like that will drive you insane once all the documents pile up and you're just trying to find the most recent one. You can sort it by date modified, but what if everyone just so happened to upload the same one on the same day? As a tip, we also use Google Drive directly on our desktop. You can, the main function of it is to access it in your browser, but some people, they don't like the idea of going into your browser. It just feels a little bit weird. And it's also helpful to have at least a sync on your desktop. So let's say you temporarily lose connection and your computer is desperately trying to get that connection back up. You can technically still keep working if you have it downloaded on your desktop because it's syncing. You can't work on it for too long until you try to press save, then it'll say it's not connected to the shared drive, but it can give you a little bit of leeway in that. So this is what it looks like on my computer. Ignore those two, I don't know what that is. So on my local D drive, I have Google Docs. And it looks like any of my shared, any folder on my computer, but it just has a little Google Drive icon. So that's very good for people who are really resilient against the cloud and they're like, I don't want to log into my browser to open files. You can download it and install it on their desktop. And then it will sync automatically, so it's not like they need to hit sync and update. It just does that on the background. As a tip, Google Drive, you can actually look at who has made what changes. A lot of people are also concerned about people overwriting their files, or if they see a whole drive is gone, they're like, what happened? You can actually see. Here you can actually look at who has sharing and editing permissions. So it's easier than, let's say you're in an organization and you set up people's permissions one at a time from their account. You can do it here through just one panel in Drive. And then this is a tab. So if you click on the activity tab, it takes you here where it tells you exactly what people are doing. So you can either be really creepy with this, or you can take this and use it for your own benefit, like who made the last changes. If you ask someone, can you work on this document, and they didn't, and you want to sneakily see if they did, you can do it like this. That's a tip.
You with your loads, with your permissions in the wild, you could from here always tell exactly where it got sent and whether or not they were able to access it.
Yeah. Our other thing that we use is we do have an internal wiki. I can't share the URL with you, but this is the screenshot of what it looks like underneath the browser bar. And it doesn't look pretty because it's just a place where we put our processes that won't change, hopefully won't change for on a really dynamic day-to-day basis. Things like how do you check your voicemail, which is something that I looked up. Oh, never mind. I did my slides wrong. Anyways, so we use our wiki for processes on operations or in functional areas. Anywhere from, how do I log into the customer service thing, to how do I upload a blog, how do I create a web page, is all in the wiki. So in a sense, it's almost like a living training manual, and it's really great for onboarding people. So when we hire new people, instead of saying, here are 3 manuals for you to go through and read, they can actually just go through this section and learn it, hopefully with someone else with them. But if we don't have time to train them, they can actually go through and read it as an instruction manual. We all have sharing permissions on this to help keep it up to date, because like what I talked to you about before, about having a manual on an intranet being out of date because it's been last updated in 2010. And if you need to update that, someone needs to download that document, make changes, save it, then send it to a tech person. The tech person will take it, then upload it to the intranet. That process is already 2 touch points too many. The way that we manage this is just by permission levels. So the way that we've set it up is we all have equal permissions within our organization to add to the wiki, but you don't have to do this. If you have more staff, you can give them either, so is owner means you can do anything under the sun with it. You can also be just a contributor, an editor, or a viewer for, let's say, new people. You might want to start them off as a viewer so they don't make changes. And then once they get more used to it and have their own insights to offer, you can then up their permissions. Any questions at this point? When I talked earlier about searching the document even though you know it exists, like even in our wiki we have a lot of information. So the benefit of us being on a Google Sites wiki is it uses the same search algorithm for the Google search engine. So everything is indexed, anything on the page. So when I first started, I actually didn't know how to check my voicemail. So, and I didn't want to bother people because they're on the phone. I just logged into our wiki and I just typed how to check voicemail. And the first page that came up is using the phone, which is very relevant to what I was doing. So then this is a really good example of just how you can find documents, especially if it's on processes that you need to exist in a company in order for operations to run smoothly. Instead of asking people all the time, like, where did you save this? Where did you save this? You can just go on a wiki and search for it if you have it set up. So looping it all back to Jess's presentation, a hot tip is in Google Wiki, and I'm sure in other wiki sites, is you can embed external web pages and web apps. So here we have this like neat little color scariness is actually a Zoho report. Zoho is another software company that does a lot of different suites. So they have dashboards, they have reports, and they also have a CRM. But for this one specifically, we're using Zoho reports, where we feed our data from our servers. We feed it directly to Zoho. That takes the data, categorizes it for us, and then populates these neat little graphs for us to analyze. And this is all automated. So every night, our server updates Zoho, and Zoho takes it. Thanks to Donna.
Like tell them how it happens?
No, I don't want to tell you. If you want to know how it happens, you can talk to Donna. Then it takes all the data, analyzes it technically for us by putting them into categories that we have set up ahead of time. We embedded this into our operations dashboard. So anytime we log into the wiki, we actually have a section here called dashboards. One of the business rules that we implemented to ensure that our wiki is always up to date is we incorporated it into our daily operations. So every week we meet together as a team to discuss how things are going. We actually just go into our own wiki, go to our dashboard tab, and see all the data in one place, even though it's pulled from an external source. So in this sense, we're always in the wiki. We can always go and just check if things are out of date. And also just save us time from looking here and then like logging into Zoho. And so our tip is, instead of having a static HTML page that's styled with CSS, even though it's so pretty and it's great, but it still lives on one person's back, that they have to go and update the links and like change the text. That's, keep that aside for maybe your website, but let's create a wiki internally for your own records, where it's more of a dynamic document that you can share the permissions with. They don't need to know code, they don't need to know CSS to make changes to it. So with that said, do you have any questions for me or for our entire team?
Is the wiki part of the apps version? Is it like, where do you find this wiki in order to make it?
So for us, we're on Google Apps for Nonprofits, which by the way is free for nonprofits, and is included in the whole package. So it's included, if you are on Google Apps for Business, you will also have access, and it's called Google Sites. We use the term wiki because that's what it is. Okay, let's face it, Google, you can't brand it. So it's called Wiki Sites, but it's an intranet.
And you can create some,
You can also create public-facing ones.
or say you can create a lot of them too.
Oh, sorry. You can create a lot of different wikis. So for us, we only have one wiki, but if let's say you have different departments that are just very full-fledged operations of their own, you can create their own internal wikis. For sites.
One use I've heard of that is often an organization will have one setup of information for the board and the other setup for the people running it. But
Yes.
boards often have their own sites.
Yes, yeah. And a good thing about the board is if you want to feed information through it, you can, instead of creating so many different pages with the same information, you can embed, like we embedded Zoho, but you can also embed Google Spreadsheets or Google Doc and just see the information. So even though it might appear in different wikis, it's the same document. So I can actually embed this into my marketing dashboard, but it's not that there's two dashboards that are being populated. It's just one dashboard with two windows, portals. Yeah, portals.
Two addresses.
Yeah, two addresses.
I have a question from the live stream. Any best practice guides for naming conventions within a cloud drive app?
Naming conventions. So
Be consistent.
yeah.
Whatever you choose, be consistent.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where I talked about earlier. Before you go and get your hands into this practice, really set up the business rules. Kind of like what I said about date fields. Is a year first? Is a month? Is a date? We internally have that discussion during one of our meetings. Like, how do you want to make date formats? So, like what Chris said, it doesn't really matter what you want to name it. You just have to be consistent. Personally, for us, we chose with year, month, and date because it sorts very nicely that way. But again, it's up to you.
One great thing about it too is, Tierney, you might want to talk a little bit more about this, but since we kind of set up our structure ahead of time, when you go to create, it's like, you'll see on the list of things that we had there, one of them was accounts management. Yeah. So like, this looks like so much, but this is the accounts management folder, and then there's subfolders in it. I work in accounts management. Documents I create generally relate to it. So when I'm about to create a document, I just start there. Like seriously, I can hit create and then do it and then move it all later. Why? Start where you are and then it's already there. And then if you set up all of this ahead of time, you can set up the permissions for the whole folder. So when you create your document, you don't have to worry about sharing the people who need on it or sending an email or doing anything. It happens, it's all native. It just happens automatically, fluidly.
That's, oh sorry, one more note. All these subfolders and folders, you can actually have individual permissions for them. So for example, if you see this one here, it says admin. There's some subfolders in there that is only privy to our ED, or Jane, or Tierney. So even though we can see that there's something there, if we go in and we try to like nosy around other people's, let's say, performance reviews, we can't because we don't have the permission.
Yes, so yes to Pi, have a question again.
Yes to Pi.
Yes to what?
To Pi.
Okay.
Yes,
Is there any character limit?
Character limit?
Yes.
To be honest, I haven't met one, and we've had files with a long name. So I don't think there is, but don't test it, because it does. It doesn't look like it will get really messy if you have long titles.
But certainly using, like one thing we found is using descriptive titles is really, like with a certain amount of description, is really helpful because when you go to search later on, then there's more likely to be keywords. So yeah, like if you create a document that's called notes, like that may be really relevant to you at the time, and then later you're like, you do a search and there's 20 documents called notes.
Yeah, so if it helps, we've had really long character like titles, probably upwards of like 50 or 70 characters. I don't want to don't quote me on that, but it can be really descriptive. Much to Tierney's point, it's better to be like descriptive but concise than the two extremes.
Are you limited to how many levels in your tree you have?
No. Again, it's up to you whether you want to get really carried away with it. We prefer to have, I think, 3 levels.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, the question is there a limit to how many folders and hierarchy you can have? And to my knowledge, there isn't one, but again, don't get too carried away because then it'll just be kind of like an Alice rabbit hole thing. You're like, where is this document? It's just folders, so. All right, well, thank you so much. Jess has team cake, but I like pie, so thank you. Thank you again for coming. If there's any